When it comes to existential nihilism, the question, what's the point of it all, is one that we tend to avoid. Does one's life truly matter? According to this school of philosophy, not only does life not have any intrinsic purpose, but every effort we make to discover or create meaning is ultimately futile. The rejection of conventional wisdom is foundational to existential nihilism, which is itself a severe strain of nihilism. The difference between existential nihilism and universal nihilism is that the latter goes farther than the former in its rejection of the possibility of objective moral principles. The question of existence's fundamental point is raised by it. The most basic parts of being human are aspirations, accomplishments, and emotional investments are touched upon by this frightening and uncomfortable perspective. Think of all the effort you put into making a sandcastle, only to have it swept away by the next tide. Although you may take pleasure in its construction or appreciate its aesthetic value to the beach for a while, according to existential nihilist philosophy, both the act of construction and the final product are meaningless since they are fleeting and do not change the world in any meaningful, long-term way. Everything we do is compared to building a sandcastle with no more influence or permanence, and thus exemplifies existential nihilism. I don't understand why people are so pessimistic. A healthy dose of cynicism about the stories society tells is usually where it starts. We are indoctrinated from an early age to desire love, success, and pleasure. Contrarily, existential nihilists challenge the script. Their main point is that these activities are forced on us without our knowledge or choice, and are based on subjective social norms that don't reflect reality. In essence, why should we embrace these man-made objectives if the cosmos is uncaring and existence lacks an intrinsic meaning? An existential crisis of sorts may result from adopting this pessimistic outlook. If we take away all the conventional wisdom and significance, what remains? This crisis point may represent an impasse for some, and they may feel trapped in despair or existential fear as a result. For some, though, it marks the beginning of their journey toward freedom. When there are no rules or expectations to follow, we are free to do what makes us happy. It is both thrilling and scary to be so free. Any image that the existential nihilist wants to paint can be seen on this blank canvas. Having nothing to hang on to may bring about a tremendous sense of liberation, not just despair. People may feel free to pursue their deepest passions in the absence of any cosmic or predetermined direction, even if such passions are ultimately perceived as having no universal significance. According to this point of view, we should all challenge the status quo of our life. Does society's pressure or our own desire motivate us to follow predetermined paths? Do we find personal significance in our endeavors, even though they may be deemed pointless by nihilists? Exploring existential nihilism can provide useful insights, despite how tough it is. In doing so, it compels us to examine our own agency in writing the story of our lives and face our anxieties about meaninglessness. See it for what it's worth. Existential nihilism challenges our conventional wisdom and compels us to reflect on our own particular values and beliefs in light of the question of why we bother to live. Our discovery of ourselves is occurring simultaneously with our discovery of a philosophical framework in this investigation. In what ways do we get our sense of purpose? What are we prepared to do when we know that it may not matter in the scheme of things? In a world without passed-down meanings, these are the problems that existential nihilism raises, daring us to live authentically. There is more to existential nihilism than meets the eye when we delve further into its teachings. We can make our lives truly distinctive by seizing this chance. With no overarching or supernatural plan telling us what to prioritize, existential nihilism encourages us to write our own stories, to discover or make our own meaning, regardless of how insignificant it may seem to the cosmos. Making sense of the world on an individual level is not an easy task. The process of building purpose from scratch is intimidating and full of obstacles. But it's also enlightening. It releases people from the shackles of dogma and predetermined routes so that they can better traverse the broad terrain of human experience. This introspection can pave the way for a wide variety of life decisions, those that are more in line with one's own aspirations and less dictated by one's family or society. Freedom of expression manifests itself for many in the forms of art, science, relationships, and individual accomplishments. The subjective meanings that these pursuits offer are very individual and immensely gratifying. Although subjective and fleeting, they serve as evidence of the human capacity to discover or create meaning in an ostensibly meaningless cosmos. A remarkable demonstration of human ingenuity and perseverance. This is far from being a pointless endeavor. Even more so, existential nihilism promotes a resistance to existential threats. Realizing that existence has no purpose helps us to be more resilient in the face of adversity. Because there is no ultimate goal or meaning in life, being resilient means accepting that mistakes and disappointments are inevitable and not the end of the universe. The stress that comes from trying to be flawless, or from believing that one is never good enough to satisfy an outside measure of worth or achievement, might be lessened with this outlook. As an added bonus, existential nihilism advocates for a very liberal kind of compassion and understanding. In a world where everything seems to have a subjective meaning, it is only fair to honor the ambitions, beliefs, and values of each individual as they attempt to make sense of life's seeming emptiness. In a more tolerant society, people are less likely to feel pressured to adhere to a narrow set of principles, and people are free to pursue their own unique paths in life. Understand that existential nihilism is not an invitation to misery or a life without joy and contentment, despite its difficult and uncomfortable aspects. More accurately, it's an open invitation to live life to the fullest, free from the weight of cosmic expectations. Embrace the freedom that comes with establishing your own meaning, live intentionally, and make mindful choices about your routes. So, to sum up, existential nihilism isn't always associated with a pessimistic or hopeless outlook on life. As an alternative, it may pave the way for a wide range of opportunities for a life that is profoundly individual and genuinely present in the world. We are compelled to discover or create our own purposes, to embrace the liberty of choice, and to construct a life worth living according to our own terms as it pushes us to tear away the illusion of intrinsic significance. This intellectual path, albeit intimidating, is profoundly powerful and has the ability to improve one's life. Looking more into existential nihilism reveals that it forces us to face our own limits while simultaneously pushing us to find purpose in our lives. Rather than giving in to hopelessness, this encounter is about recognizing our limited existence and using that knowledge guide us toward a more meaningful and genuine life. With no absolute truths to rely on, existential nihilism emphasizes how fleeting life is. Being aware of life's impermanence might serve as a strong inspiration instead of a cause for depression. It may encourage us to savor each moment, lean in closer to those around us, and experience life to the fullest. It is possible to perceive the transience of life as an asset that heightens the significance of every encounter rather than a detriment. A greater respect for individual autonomy is one of the outcomes of practicing existential nihilism. Realizing that there are no hard and fast rules that dictate our lives forces us to face the freedom to make a decision based on what feels right at any given moment. With such immense freedom comes the weight of responsibility for one's actions. We can't look to other people or things for significance. We have to make all of our own decisions, big and little, though this may cause existentialists to experience the anxiety of freedom. It also compels us to live each day to the fullest, according to our own set of values and goals. Maintaining this level of participation calls for constant introspection and deliberate action. Regular self-reflection is required of us existential nihilists. We must ask ourselves if the meanings we have constructed still have any power over us, and if our deeds are in line with these interpretations. Processes like this are ongoing and not static. Because of the dynamic character of human existence, our individual understandings of meaning can change throughout time in response to new information and experiences. because of the great degree of self-reflection and flexibility it requires. It tests our mental and emotional resilience. We are also encouraged by existential nihilism to accept life for what it is, a farce. Even while we know that existence has no purpose by design, we nonetheless keep looking for ways to give it purpose, which might sound ridiculous. This ridiculousness, nevertheless, should not cause one to lose hope. Rather, it can be accepted as something inherent to being human. Having the guts to laugh at the ridiculous and keep looking for purpose in life in spite of it is a tremendous affirmation of life. It embodies a spirit that, rather than letting existential insights overwhelm it, finds pride and purpose in defying the weight of meaninglessness. Viewing existence through the prism of existential nihilism makes us feel like lost souls wandering through a desolate wasteland. Everything about our journey is personal, defined by the roads we take and the stops we make along the way. Rather from being aimless, this voyage is a calculated investigation of one's core beliefs, values, and life's greater purpose. In a universe that provides no meaning, every action we perform demonstrates our independence, and every choice we make demonstrates our ability to find or manufacture our own. Within the expansive realm of existential nihilism, literature plays a captivating role by narrating the core principles of this philosophical position. The ridiculous and the meaningless have been examined by writers like Samuel Beckett and Albert Camus, who have shed light on the human predicament when its intrinsic significance is removed. In his groundbreaking novel, The Myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus captures the internal conflict of existential nihilism. Only the ascent itself can satisfy a man's soul, he writes. Imagining Sisyphus' content is essential, perfectly capturing the existential nihilist outlook. This remark encourages us to take joy in the fight, no matter how pointless it may be. Despite his ridiculous situation, Camus's Sisyphus finds purpose in his rebellion and the labor he must do, though the end result may be pointless on a cosmic scale. This story teaches us that what matters most is the journey itself, the resistance we feel against the emptiness, and the patience it takes to get there. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot echoes this theme, with its protagonists and antagonists mired in an endless cycle of hoping for the arrival of an impersonal deity or event that may never come. In depicting his character's never-ending wait, Beckett echoes the existential fear that there might not be any final revelation or truth to be found. Even yet, his words carry a great deal of meaning. We always find something, a ditty, to give us the impression we exist. The essence of existential nihilism is summed up in this line. People will always try to create some kind of meaning or existence, even while they know that either might be completely meaningless. An important part of existential nihilism, as discussed in these literary works, is the idea of creativity in the face of emptiness. Art, relationships, and personal ideologies are ways to fight the seeming meaninglessness of existence, which is a theme that runs through human history and personal experiences. This artistic rebellion is about more than simply finding one's niche. It's also about showcasing one's survival and resiliency. Fyodor Dostoevsky's writings, especially Notes from Underground, explore a man's internal conflicts as he faces the consequences of living in a nihilistic earth. The protagonist frequently discusses in his monologues the anguish of being extremely self-aware, of being too cognizant of the follies of life. I vow to you, gentlemen, that to be unduly conscious is an illness, a true, profound sickness. Dostoevsky, 1864. There is a road to deep self-awareness and existential honesty that leads to despair, this hyper-awareness of the absurdity and the absence of fundamental significance. Being aware of this sickness as a natural component of dealing with existential nihilism might help us comprehend the human need to construct stories and systems, even when we are aware that they may be unfounded. Our own existential journeys are mirrored in the accounts of these literary figures as we reflect on their contributions to our knowledge of existential nihilism. Their existence serves as a poignant reminder that, although the cosmos may appear apathetic, It is precisely our feelings, choices, and inventions that imbue the immense void with the myriad hues of human existence. Engaging with these pieces allows us to delve into existential nihilism and uncover the multitude of ways we, as people and a society, continue to create meaning on empty canvases. The indefatigable will to create, in the face of adversity, is demonstrated in every stroke of resilience and every moment of creativity.